look, the Masters is going to be played November 9th through the 15th. But also coming on the heels of some bad news, the Open has been canceled. The opening too, probably. And that's the first time that's happened in some time. It's also really interesting to note that the PGA Championship also has been moved, and the Ryder Cup has been moved. And what I think the most interesting thing about all of this, though, is the Masters being scheduled November 9th to November 15th is an SEC flex. Because, cool, we get the Masters in November during a portion of the year where we're used to seeing football get into high gear, but also they schedule it during, SEC JUCO week, because November 14th, that Saturday, you have UT Martin at Alabama, Ole Miss at Arkansas, UMass at Auburn. You get Missouri at Florida, Tennessee at Georgia, that ought to be decent, Mississippi State at Kentucky, South Carolina at LSU, and Vanderbilt at Texas A&M. So even the Masters can't usurp SEC football, which is the king size flex, because I've always thought of the Masters as being this event that really gets to trounce all. Certainly the college football, just as soon as it's ending, everybody's already into Masters mode, and we're used to hearing about our favorite golfers basically getting into this tournament and what it means to them, and pimento sandwiches and what Augusta National looks like, and Jim Nantz on the call, and all these other things that go along with the pageantry of, golf's favorite tournament. And moving it, cool, great, awesome. I love the postponing of events rather than the canceling of events, because I see no reason really to cancel anything that isn't immediate. Whereas with the Open, I could totally see that. UK is not going to be in any place to have the Open. It's just not going to be in a good place. So I get that, right? And right now, they're still, I think, trying to have this thing in New York for the PGA Championship, which will be dicey, I think, even if it is in August or September. But for the SEC for you to look at the conference schedule, right, and to say which week in November could we have this thing, because we don't want to compete with Alabama football, with Georgia football, with South Carolina football, I think is wild. I also think it's going to be easier for the golfers to go through this, because many of those guys are college football fans, right? Justin Thomas went to Alabama. Jordan Spieth went to Texas. Bo Van Pelt, friend of this show, friend of the Animal, went to Oklahoma State, of course. I giggle at that, because I think it is funny, and I do think it speaks to the power of just what the SEC means, not just to college football, but to the sporting landscape. I'm beginning to wonder if SEC football could actually compete with the NFL now, because we know that the Masters will genuflect, and if the Masters will genuflect, what sport would not genuflect? Also speaks to the prowess of Nick Saban, Gus Malzahn, Ed Orgeron, and just how great that particular region of football has been. Also for the Open, that means that we've seen it cancel for World War I, World War II, and now COVID-19. Those are 3 instances. The fourth one is dating back to the 19th century, when a 17-year-old won the trophy, Tom Morris Jr., and then did not return it, refused to return the trophy, so they called off the tournament the next year because he decided to keep the trophy. To which I'm going, yes, you absolutely decide to keep the trophy, and that's a flex. I get it. Also means that this is the first time that the Masters would be played in November, and the first time since 1936 that a major championship has been played since November. That was the PGA Championship, and the winner got $1,000. So 1883, the Open was played in November, 1886, 1889, 1927 for the PGA, 1936 for the PGA, and now 2020 for the Masters. We hope. Right now, I can't see a reason not to be optimistic about that. I can't see a reason as to why we won't be excited to watch the Masters. And with the sports calendar being so upset and so all over the place, it's assumed that college football gets started on time, right? That's the only sport right now that would, right? Outside of perhaps the NBA, even if they get to finish their season or don't get to finish their season, because Major League Baseball, Major League Soccer, those sports, they're already starting late if going to have to suspend part of their, not just suspend, have to shorten part of their season, not suspend. I'm also really interested to take a look at whether or not you would just push college football into the spring to give preparation for it. And I want it in the fall just as much as anybody else, but if you're going to get a crappy product, is it better to have it going on for the sake of having it going on than have a crappy product or risk kids getting injured? Because that's the other thing that I think we need to take into account. If there's not enough time for the kids to actually go through conditioning to get ready to put on pads and then put on pads and go through conditioning of playing football, there's no reason to do it. And that's just college football, right? The NFL operates by its own rules, and we'll see what that actually means for them going forward, because the TV money is just that big a deal. And you're talking about $17 billion, give or take, that the NFL generates in a year. But what does that mean for high school football? What does that mean for kids that are going into their senior seasons this year, for which, everybody wants to see their kid play in their senior year? It's just what you want to happen. And I wonder how you're going to be able to pull that off. Because, you could play empty stadiums, you think, on paper in college football or the NFL because of television, right? That's not true with high school football. It is a true spectator sport. You have to be there, especially at the lower levels, because as much as you might think that Owasso or Broken Arrow will get their own sort of audience from TV viewing, that might be just them, right? And are you going to allow play-by-play radio to be there? I would think so, right? But is it the same as being able to watch the game? No, that's why we like watching the game. It's the same thing with any of these sports. They're all built around television at the higher levels and built around us actually getting up off of our rear ends, leaving the house, and going to sit down to watch them at the lower ends. And at this time when we're all indoors, it's really open to whoever wants to guess about what that might look like going forward. Getting back to the golf news that I'm sure is going to dominate the rest of the day and going into tomorrow. The UK government really did not want to have to cancel the British Open, otherwise known as the Open. And I get not wanting to cancel it even in April, but I don't see a way. And I think they made the right decision, as much as that sucks, because at this point, any live sporting event that has championships on the line is one that I'm going to be all for and all about, within reason, right? If you're putting people in danger or you're putting people in harm's way, no, you can't do that. You have to put the person ahead of what they mean to you personally, or what they mean swinging a golf club, or even hitting each other in the face in the case of the UFC. I also think that they're going to have to look at moving this thing back to, perhaps where they would play it this year. Because next year, I believe it's supposed to be played at Royal St. George's, and the St. Andrews was going to be 2022. Or maybe they're going to move those things around. Again, playing with the schedule means playing with everybody's schedule, because UEFA Champions League is also looking at resuming play in August and September even. And is it important that some of these sports that didn't get to finish their seasons, like the NHL or like the NBA? And what does that do to the sports calendar? And that's just our sports, right? What does it do for the concerts that are going on or were supposed to go on during this time? South by Southwest getting canceled is a big deal. Going into May, Rockwell, Oklahoma is, probably getting canceled, right? Same thing with Norman Music Fest here locally. I wonder if how many people are actually going to be talking to each other about what they should be doing. And I would love to hear what the PGA had to say to the SEC about their schedule, or to the NCAA about their schedule, if anything, because with the Masters in particular, who controls their tournament and will tell you exactly when their tournament is going to be held, they get to make that decision in-house in a way that I didn't know that they did until Jay Moynihan got up and said, hey, we do what the master tells us to do on this front. And how many of those guys also just love college football? How many of those guys really care about other sports? And I submit to you, we're finding out that they do. And we're also finding out just how much money is involved and how much money seems to be trumping good reason and health and conscience. It's going to get uncomfortable here. But kudos to the British Open for making a very tough, a very difficult decision. Words are hard. And to the Masters for trying to put on their tournament at a time when we all expect it to be safe for them to put on their tournament.